following message is being transmitted at the request of the Boundless Podtrap Movie Review and the guys of the BPT. What you are about to hear contains spoilers to movies. If you don't want to hear these spoilers, please disengage your listening device at this time. If you can't handle those with a possible differing view on a movie, you may also want to disengage your listening device at this time. Stay tuned for a movie review that only the guys at the Boundless Podtrap can give you.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey. Getting into it. I can groove to this. Hey.
I listen to this all day.
Now we're back at it.
Yeah.
What's happening, guys? This is episode BPT MR003. This is the third episode of the movie review podcast with the Boundless Podtrap. I use way too many...
Speech impediments are a real thing.
Oh.
Justin,
Don't make fun of it. Don't make fun of it.
We haven't got one of these intros right on any of these episodes.
He's like,
Not a single one.
MTV. VH1.
Oh, that's... what's his name on MTV? I could not stand the... What's his name? The jockey dude.
Dan Cortez?
Nope, not him. MTV, fuck. He was
Downtown Judy Brown.
yeah. So,
Hot.
what's up, guys?
I loved her.
Okay.
I think we got an awesome movie review here. Well,
Yeah.
at least I do. I don't know if you guys do, but I do.
We'll
Shit,
see.
it's going to be right on point. So let's just jump right into it. Right now, we are going to be covering 1995's Passion of Darkly Noon. It's written and directed by London Phillips Ridley. He's also known for The Craze, The Reflecting Skin, and The Heartless. Have any of you guys seen any of those?
I have not.
I've not,
Boom.
no.
I've seen the trailers to The Heartless. It looked like a really awesome one. And there's a few actors, or at least one important actor, that's in this Darkly Noon movie. He's also in The Reflecting Skin. It stars 27-year-old Brendan Fraser coming off of The Airheads the year before, and 27-year-old Ashley Judd before she reached a larger credit. Also has Lord of the Rings Aragorn. He kind of has a mute role, played by Viggo Mortensen.
Kinda.
Kind of.
He did have a mute
He
role.
clicked, and he
He whistled.
and yeah.
Did fucking magic.
For a guy who speaks 7 languages, they kept his mouth shut in this film. And a key role played by
And
Grace.
it was his best role ever.
No, a key role played by Grace Zabriskie, who's been in other horror movies, which you guys might be familiar with.
Absolutely.
She's Grace Poole in Child's Play. She's been in Tales from the Crypts. She's also in Armageddon. That's not a horror, but you guys love that one. There's also in They Crawl and The Grudge, and she's big on Twin Peaks.
She is Twin Peaks.
Yeah. Ooh, what does that mean?
She is the most influential character on the series.
I
Twin
thought he was
Peaks.
going somewhere else with that. This movie is a very, as Jeremy said in the previous BPT episode, that this was probably a my type of film.
And by my, I mean a Justin type of
Justin
film.
type of film.
Justino. Yeah. That's a me. It's a me. You still believe. But yeah, no, this was actually ranked in the top 10 of the Daily Telegraph's list of 50 most underrated films of all time. I like to think so too, because this is probably one of my favorite, underrated film for sure. It's like a B-rated. I don't know if I want to consider it a B-rated, because with a few tweaks, it could have been A-lister, I think. It has like a 12-cast movie, 13, or 14 if you want to consider the dog and the elephant. Yeah.
There are 14 people in
The
it?
elephant is a
There's
cat.
12 people in
And
it.
they all came at the very fucking end.
There's 12 people in
Okay.
it. Yeah. The Internet Movie Database synopsis, it says, a young man who has spent his life as a member of an ultra-conservative Christian cult loses his parents and becomes disoriented. Wandering into a forest and meeting a coffin transporter, a caring woman, her mute boyfriend, and his mother. It's ranked as listed as a drama mystery thriller. Internet Movie Database gave this a ranking of 5.9 out of 10, Rotten Tomatoes put it at 44% of the tomato reader with a 55% audience score. Personally, I would have to give it a 9.7. What about you boys?
You only did that because I said we're giving 10s out willy-nilly.
Oh, no, there's things I would fix about this.
So I'll go first. I wrote a little thing here before I give my rating. I just put production-wise, it definitely gets an A for creating something more artistic. It's not the everyday type of film we are used to seeing, cinematography-wise. The camera angles and how scenes are put together can be at times disorienting, but I believe that is what makes this a unique film. Dialogue is more on the amateur side and isn't necessarily how people would talk, but maybe that's what it was done intentionally that way. Now, as a film, it has its moments. It can grasp your attention, but there are many down moments to where it can be hard to keep your focus. The story is simplistic and easy to follow, but I don't think there was much effort put into trying to go above and beyond. The end finale scene was intense and the build-up was fantastic, but the resolve was kind of anticlimactic to me. So overall, out of our rating system, I'm going to give it 5 stars. It was a good movie. I don't really have anything too harsh to say about it, but there also isn't anything I could say that was like, oh, this is great. So I think right there with Rotten Tomatoes and stuff at like the 50% area.
It's a soft movie that goes hard and then soft again.
Nice. When Justin really liked this movie, and he's really been toting it, so I got excited about it. And when we first talked about watching it, I found the trailer before I found the movie. The trailer made it look awesome, but it put this false idea in my head about the movie. It kind of portrayed it as almost like a fantastical horror movie, like almost like a fairy tale. And it portrayed heavily in the fact of this woman as a witch. So I went in with this idea of something, and the movie delivered something completely different on the first watch. I watched it the first time and really tried to analyze it, and I think it took a lot away from the movie for me. I watched it a second time and just watched it as a fan, and really tried to like it. I really wanted to like it. And the second time through trying to watch it as a fan, I think I enjoyed it less than the first time. The acting, and I say this jokingly, that it was Viggo Mortensen's probably best role, but it probably was. Like, not having a speaking role and having to deliver.
You can do so much more if you're not.
Right.
And getting to have a sex scene with Ashley Judd.
Oh, man. And particularly this Ashley Judd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blonde Ashley Judd is...
Not her underarms.
Yeah, right? Oh, my goodness.
And that's how they explained she was a free spirit, by just not shaving her armpits. Viggo Mortensen was amazing in this. The character who played...
Jude?
Lauren Dean.
Oh, yeah, Jude.
Was fantastic. Ashley Judd's acting, and...
There's a few questionable parts with her.
Yeah,
I thought.
Ashley Judd's acting and Brandon Fraser's stuttering acting just kind of fell short with me. Yeah. Cinematography-wise, the shooting of the scenes were... Some of the angles and some of the choices they made were beautiful. But the saturation and some of the lighting choices they made, and it could have been just me being colorblind, really took me out of it. So it was too much for me.
Where did you watch it on?
I watched it off of YouTube.
Gotcha.
I bought the standard definition.
Yeah, I don't know if they recut it because I forget the company that re-released it back in like 2009 or something like that, but they brung the colors up, and it's not the same thing.
It was
might have been that one.
Super, super high contrast, super saturated. Everything was so bright, and I think they were doing that to emphasize the moods, as the way that I read an article. Yeah. That's why they did it like that. They wanted to make it more fantasy and more fairy tale-esque, but for me, it just took me out of it. So
I haven't seen that version of it, and I think the original does it well. It's not heavy, right? Because I grew up on that one, and I think if I would have watched it outside of that, it would have came off differently. But
fair enough.
Did you give your stars?
I'm about to.
Oh, okay.
All that being said, I think I would have to give it a 4 out of 10.
Aw.
So collectively, we hit a 9,
give or take. Yeah. I think I'll probably carry most of this here, but
I will say this: the movie itself got a 2. The fact that this movie made me get super nostalgic for Twin Peaks and made me remember how much I love David Lynch, gave it an extra 2 points. So that's how I got the 4.
Oh, man. You just wiped your feet with it. Uh-huh.
My whole thing with this is supposed to be kind of digging into stories on set and looking at it from the director filmmaking part of it. This was a tough one because Philip Ridley, there's not much out there with him about this movie.
Oh.
And he doesn't have many movies to his credit. Like, I think he has 7 directing credits and 8 or 9 writing credits, and that's it. And he hasn't done anything since 2009.
Well,
like,
yeah.
This was like his second to last film that he did.
Well, this one
I
just
think
came out to go to Cannes. Like, this wasn't supposed to have a major theatrical release. This was just
It's just supposed to be like a
movie.
B-rated type of thing.
And it was like you said, it was so close to being just like, if it had a good Cannes release, it was gonna go. It could have went on screen, but it just didn't show well. So
Yeah. And I can see how a lot of people will give it like that mediocre rating. I think if you were more analytical and looked at it from the storytelling, I thought Philip Ridley's storytelling was pretty up there. The use of not just the story with the visuals and the props and all that, I think it tells a greater story, which we'll get into in a bit. But is there any more before we dive in?
No, I think, Lonnie had kind of said too, the cinematography and the angles that he chose were unique, but also very amateurish. And that's not saying anything bad. Like, I believe some of the angles he did they're not angles you see in any kind of movie, but at times it's like some of the cutaways and the things they would do, it just seemed like, who would think that way? Like, why would you edit that way? Like, it made it, like I said before, disorienting at times, just some of the things and the build up, and then how you'd have like this build up and it would be right in the middle of like the part where he's like masturbating, watching her or whatever, through the crack or whatever of the barn he's staying in.
And then a cold close.
And then it's just like day 5. Yeah. And it's just like, what the fuck? No, like you're leaving me hanging there.
him too.
But yeah, but
he finished.
It's what I find interesting is Ridley's, I mean, back in 95, he wasn't anything super big. Right. And yet he's got Brendan Fraser, who at the time was
Brendan Fraser.
Shut the fuck up.
Like
Brendan Fraser.
It's like Eraser, but Fraser.
But like, he was on the up at this point.
Yeah.
Ashley Judd kind of was too.
She was like a year before, was it that Cuba Gooding one? Not Double Jeopardy. No. To Kill? No, never mind.
I'm looking.
But he had like a pretty big, not really big, but he had an all-star cast. And if the rest of his stuff that he had out there was anything like this, I don't understand how he got so much backing for this movie. And I don't feel like he worked with them on, like, to me, I feel like it was a one-take thing. Like, I'm going to set the camera up, action, and whatever they did and they said, good, cut, moving on. I'm interested to see what your thoughts was on Grace Zabriskie, the actress, her character. And sorry, I didn't write characters' names down. I thought she was fucking terrible.
Roxy. Yeah.
I thought she was, the way she was portrayed to me was like that day, the actress that was supposed to play that part bailed and there's like, hey, come here. And she did the worst accent, overacting, and yeah.
Well, I can probably fill that in, and I'm sure Justin could as well, but that's where the love for David Lynch and Twin Peaks comes in, because she is iconically known for her role in Twin Peaks. And they basically, like, if you're a Twin Peaks fan or if you're a David Lynch fan, this movie was a love letter to David Lynch and to Twin Peaks. It's basically, if you mirrored these two, it would be disgusting how close they are. And Grace is such a figure in Twin Peaks and David Lynch cinema. The character is so similar from her work on Twin Peaks to Passion of Darkly Noon. They wanted that resemblance.
I never watched Twin Peaks.
There's only one of the bigger overactors I couldn't really get into was the Quincy character. It's like he was just so enamored with like death, and
I loved him.
Yeah, I mean, he was funny, he was witty, he was like, so if you leave him by himself, he'll keep going.
So unnecessary.
But it's like, all right, man, like pull the reins back.
So unnecessary.
But no, so I'm gonna break it down pretty much scene by scene here. Yeah, so you kind of start off with 12 days, 13 days, and each day kind of has like its own theme. So starting off, it starts off with a desolated scoring as it follows Brendan Fraser's darkly noon trudging through the rocky and woodland terrain. He's looking pretty broken and beaten, and the simple scoring, it plays to the desolation. It's using like this single instrument plucking like dun 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 dun. And I think that carries a lot to it. How did you guys find the opening?
It kind of like The Dead Don't Die. The opening kind of grabbed my attention, like, oh my god, like this is going to be insane, great. And then it was like, then it got to the movie, and I'm like, oh,
yeah. What it looks like is he's pretty much going through a forest, and he's tattered and all this
suit.
Yeah, so he's always dressed to the. Well, I don't want to say dressed to the nines, but he dresses pretty tight like the entire time. He's coming from a cult-like family in a small little area that was just. We'll get into that in a bit.
And you
too,
see his ass and ball sack.
Yeah, we'll go into that.
You do get to see a peek of the ball sack.
Yeah,
ball sack.
Not
right
a
there.
peek.
But yeah, so when he's trudging through, he falls down, and he's pretty much out of it. Like he's trying to maintain his stuff. He's
Dehydration's real at that point.
He just experienced a traumatic experience, and dude's driving along in his truck, and he halts on the brakes, nearly hitting Darkly in the forest road. And Darkly comes from this like I was saying, this cult family, which he's kind of conditioned
it's
to.
It's a sect. It's not a cult.
Yeah. He's conditioned to think a certain way. It's supposed to be like the best way. It's all he knows, and it really shows. Jude loads him up into the truck and drops this godly man onto the doorstep of what is supposed to be the devil, if you will. It's played. There's a few different storylines that are played, and by the end of it, you don't know which is what. So it does leave the mind to kind of put the pieces together. What I gleaned out of this probably going to be different than what you guys gleaned out of it, but
accurate. 100% accurate what you just said there.
Yeah, Ashley Judd plays the character of Callie, who rises out of the forest, and her radiance, her appearance of innocence. She's quick to help nurse Darkly back to health. Clay is currently absent. Clay is supposed to be the husband of, or not husband, but the boyfriend, the male figure of Callie. She mentions him quite a bit, but she says that he likes to go on to like these little walks into the forest.
Walks.
These walks in the forest, and he's gone for days. So that's like the first day. The first day is pretty much placing of everything. A secluded house in the middle of the forest, creating the place and items.
Fucking Viggo Mortensen movies where all he does is fucking walk.
Stupid.
Get it.
But it didn't follow him. Yeah, it didn't follow him. You're pretty much in like this desolated forest. It's supposed to look like in the southern parts of America, but it was actually filmed in Germany.
That's the other thing, real quick. I thought that set, that area, it looked like a movie set.
It did.
Built.
It did. But yeah, no, it's in the woods of Germany. So abruptly, Darkly is woken by Callie holding his hand while her and Jude try to situate Darkly in a bed. He had just witnessed a traumatic experience, yet her soft voice soothes him, and cushions him back to a resting state. She pretty much tells him to rest and ease, and he closes his eyes and goes back to sleep. This is foreshadowing a skill, if you will, of Callie's, of Ashley Judd's character. So Jude also jokes with Clay about Clay leaving. He ends up loading the trucks of coffins alone. He also drops off this new tool, which is like a long-handled chisel blade. The blade serves as a purpose. It is a powerful tool for cutting things in half. It's a kind of a coincidence, I thought, that him and the blade arrived at that house. Darkly Noon and the blade arrived at the same time. Jude wants to get away, but has never done so yet, and Callie claims that she refrains from going to town for supplies because everyone has a negative assumption about her. People think that, I don't think it exposed that they think that she's a witch yet. She doesn't necessarily tell the backstory until later, but you get a story about her ahead of time. Some of the best lines that I liked right there between like the conversation with Jude and Callie. Jude says, "Does God play jokes?" And Callie says, "All the time." And then as she says that, there's a crackle in the distance as though it's a response to the comment. And as soon as Jude leaves, that's when the rain starts coming down on her. And she just kind of like basks in it. She soaks in it. Are we following all? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
we're on the same page.
All right.
Like I've got my little notes here, and you're right. I think of Callie as a Satan character as well.
Right.
I'm thinking Jude, like in the biblical sense. I take Darkly as the quote unquote Eve type character.
Yeah, I can see that. I didn't put it that way, but yeah. So she stumbles through his belongings where she finds a Bible, and she doesn't really have a reaction to it, so it doesn't speak much to the evil part just yet anyways. I think a lot of the translation with these characters are kind of mixed-matched, and you don't necessarily know what is what at what time, or if you ever even know at all. So watching it and putting together the pieces, you can kind of have two different stories from beginning to finish at the same time. She finds that the name Darkly Noon is written in the cover. So second day, this is pretty much learning the struggles of Darkly Noon. Darkly wakes up naked anew, and this is where you get to see Brendan Fraser's nutsack.
That you do.
Yeah.
No
that
hole.
you do, Edward.
No hole, but
We're
definitely ballsack.
Yeah, there you go. He dons a coat and is fixing the pieces together, like he's trying to figure out where he is. He goes downstairs and he meets Callie. Callie's name actually comes from the Greek kalos as a nickname for Calpurnia or Calandra. Callie means beautiful and lovely, and Callie
is an expensive state. Don't go there.
Yep, don't go to Callie. We're going to Callie. Yeah. No. So Callie says that Clay goes for these walks in the dark. She says it helps him sort out his problems. And Clay, the name Clay, is kind of a Teutonic name that means mortal. It also is an allegory for Earth. So she needs him to stand on. So she's kind of love-bound or stricken, or, well, they're both smitten for each other. Clay is the earth that she stands on, and she is the light that shines down type of thing. When Callie makes Darkly some food, she pulls the peach off of the plate soon after that, after they meet. And it's rather seductively as she starts to eat it. Whereas Clay is mortal, she is consuming the immortality. It's also a symbol of, peaches are a symbol of nakedness, disarming, setting at ease. She has a knack for pretty much disarming situations. So if she finds herself in a heightened situation, she can pretty much use her looks, her beauty, her loveliness to pretty much disarm anything.
Her peach.
Yes.
Peach.
That too sometimes.
Beautifully fried blonde hair.
I could eat a peach for hours.
So
We both went, oh.
I could eat a peach for hours.
Yeah, afterwards she says that his clothes are ruined, that she had to burn them, and she offers some of Clay's clothes to him, her husband, or not really husbands, but boyfriends. They're not married. It could be a clever way of trying to control a man, putting him into another man's clothes. Darkly asks about the Bible that was in the pocket, and we've established that right now that he's doing a little bit more talking, that he has like this stammering stutter. And Darkly starts in on his religious traditions, on how he got his name. He says his name, Darkly Noon, comes from 2 Corinthians 13:12, which says, "For now we see each other through a glass darkly," which is actually 1 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians says, "Greet one another with a holy kiss."
They said that his parents took a pin and randomly stabbed in a Bible, and the name that it stuck into was Darkly. So
yeah, Darkly and Noon. So that's how they choose their names in their community. Darkly reveals that his community was slaughtered by an explosion and townspeople, gunfire, helicopters, and all that. That's why he was running through the forest. He was trying to get away. There were some townspeople who were causing issues, and when they went to go get the authorities, everything just kind of went haywire and pretty much slaughtered the entire town, and he was the only person to escape. So Callie takes pity and understands the feeling of pretty much being casted out, an outcast. So she allows Darkly to stay in the barn where she tells him that she once lived. And this starts the third day. He's coming to ease a little bit. They establish the rules, the sins, the threats, etc. His temptation is tested on this third day. Callie is in a short dress glistening in the sun. He offers his charity to help her fix up the house, and she begins to call him Lee. She says, "I can't call you Darkly," so she removes the dark part from his name and just calls him Lee. But the subtle things, she slips in her joke. She says, "The whole damn house is going to fall down, I swear of it." Were you going to say something?
You're leaving out her outfit in this scene.
I said she was wearing a short sundress.
That wasn't descriptive enough.
yeah, it's a short.
It was revealing.
Backless.
It was revealing a lot of skin.
A lot of.
It's a very hot day. You can see pretty much for the entirety of the film, like they don't have air conditioning.
She's getting lippy.
Yeah, she's getting. Well, she wasn't wearing much.
She was not wearing much at all. Great camera angles. Anyways, go ahead. Back
on all fours on the roof of the mouth. Roof of the.
Where's your
house.
mind at?
Yeah. So and he pretty much strolls up behind her, just taking a second to look at her, and he's kind of
There it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Thank God we have the visuals.
You can catch it.
microphone is standing at attention.
But yeah, so also you find here that Darkly kind of establishes a bit of a modesty. His button-up long-sleeve shirts, he keeps it all the way up to the top button, even on like the hottest of days. Like everybody's pretty much sweating through this. There's beads of sweat on every, like it's a southern hot day, or at least it's supposed to look that way. Callie is having a talk about the harshness of his ways, pretty much trying to ease him back. Like, hey, we don't do things like that here. She says, God can strike me down dead, and a shotgun blast is fired upon the front porch. In a fit of emotions, she fires back. She grabs a shotgun from the house and starts firing back.
It wasn't a shotgun. It was a 22.
A 22 shotgun.
Not a shotgun.
She grabs a firearm.
It's a rifle.
Yeah. And
you were the one in the military. You should know your fucking guns.
I didn't fire a shotgun like that.
Obviously.
But yeah, no, she fires back, exclaiming that she isn't hurting anybody. You notice here that she also kind of seems to, and this is what I was getting back, like when she was easing Darkly to, relax and try to rest and stuff like that when he came into the house, what she kind of speaks, and she speaks into existence. Asking for a smile from Darkly, she speaks aloud saying, Clay, come home. You can tell Darkly is holding back his temptation still. That was day 3. The 4th day starts, and this is pretty much where Darkly pulls back a few layers. He learns more of her, and he pulls back some of the layers of himself, trying to not necessarily drop his ways, but reveals more. So it starts with Callie and Darkly in the kitchen drinking some lemonade. And Callie's rubs an ice cube across her neck and chest. It comes off very sensual. At least Darkly reads it that way. Yeah, so she leads Darkly to a natural spa where she undresses to her undergarments, and Darkly insists that it's a sin, as with he has done with everything else. Everything's a sin. You shouldn't do that. It's a sin. Smoking, etc. Darkly watches her as usual. She enters the water and submerges. Her beauty is always radiating. There are cracks in his discipline, you'll notice right here. Her light kind of seems to shine its way through. It seems to be a dark temptation in the most innocent way. Callie gets a bug in her hair and asks for Darkly to try to remove it, and you can tell right here that he's kind of enjoying it. She gets close, and he starts picking his fingers through her hair, and like he's closing his eyes, and it's almost... well, it's seductive. It's
almost orgasmic.
It's pleasurable for him. He's enjoying it, but there is a shame that kind of weighs heavy on him in his efforts. His distraction ends up killing the dragonfly.
Right.
So he's trying to pick the dragonfly out of her hair and just orgasms all over it.
And then she shows him her favorite spot.
1 second. So dragonflies, they learn to scurry across the water surfaces. It's kind of like a strong symbol of looking beyond the surface of a person or situation. The totem of a dragonfly brings insights of adaptability and transformation, and the beauty and aerobatics of the dragonfly were considered the perfect way to catch our attention. Dragonflies are linked with water, and water is an emotional element. I think the dead dragonfly symbolizes his own transformative corruption. So this is kind of one of the beginning of he's giving into his ways, or not necessarily giving into, but trying to maintain his footing, maintain his discipline into what he was taught. So after the spa, she takes him to the cave and says, this is my favorite place, as Lonnie was suggesting. There's cave drawing stories of war painting painted on the walls. There, you also see like a red handprint, maybe bloody, remaining on the wall. The cave signifies natural defenses, inherent knowledge. A cave may symbolize a loss of instinctual reactions or knowledge, and some aspect in life will not turn out as planned. It could also represent a womb, a birthing, female genitalia. She has played on his emotions, maybe not intentionally, but maybe as a natural display. This is kind of just her nature, is sexual as a woman. Callie states the cave is right at the middle of the woods, and there is a beautiful shot where I thought this was probably one of the more creative shots, where she walks across the painting of war, and she stops, casting her shadow over the handprint, the red handprint. It was red. I don't know if you saw that, but...
Sure didn't.
Lonnie's colorblind for the movie review listeners here.
I seen it, but it was a gray handprint.
So she finishes saying that the cave is the heart of the woods, and the handprint is at the heart of her shadow. Stopping on that and delivering that line, I think, was kind of a very cool storytelling, romantic, like, it was beautiful. It was poetry in motion. Handprints are recognized in Native American culture. The handprint is a symbol for proficiency in hand-to-hand combat and grants the wearer energy. So she has, I don't know yet if it's signifying combat for her or how she would combat something. She has a ability of just easing out of things. So she covers the handprint with her shadow. She covers it with her shadow. The shadow is symbol of the self, a mask or avatar to something hidden. She omits the light, but there seems to be a grasping darkness over her heart. So it's grabbing her heart. Darkly says, someone once told me that you can walk halfway into the forest, and then after that, you are walking out. And then Callie disagrees and says something like, you can walk as far as into the woods as you have a mind to go. It can go on forever sometimes. She is pretty much the shining light in that cave with the things that she is saying. Darkly confesses that he's been thinking about her and those few days that he's been there, insinuating to be something more, and she acknowledges it as though it was her workings. Like, she's just brushed it off like, yeah, I know. And she sidesteps it and asks him to be a part of their family and not to spoil anything. And then that's when she exits and leaves him alone in the cave, and it echoes back to what I said earlier. The cave symbolizes a loss of instinctual reaction or knowledge, and something will not turn out as planned. So yeah, later, at the barn, he takes a 10 and begins making his own little safe. And a safe is meaningful to hold the things of value. Maybe he feels like he's not as protected as he thought. So as he's trying to maintain his ways, she's pretty much disarming him and dropping his defenses. He dumps all the clay stuff out, and the first thing he puts in it is the Bible, and next to that is a picture of his ma and pa. In his disappointment, he has realized he hasn't walked his path. He's replanting in a way that's more adaptable, like how a metal tin is more pliable. Obviously, this is right before he jerks it to her, so maybe he's strong in one way. She comes out, and he's pretty much beating it off. Fifth day, he's pretty much facing his limitations, his rejections. So the next morning, he's holding a handful of white flowers, and Darkly spends the morning collecting some flowers for Callie as he's on the edge of the woods watching Callie soak up some sun. And then suddenly you see Clay come from the other side of the screen. Clay's returned, and it crushes Darkly. He smashes the freshly picked daisies as he watches them return to the house. He's broken. He's saddened. Her legs are wrapped around Clay, kissing him. Daisies symbolize love, fertility, and sensuality. He nearly molds the flowers like Clay into a ball, so his anger, he's hurt. So much that he expels the ball of once beauty to the ground. But he notices this barbed wire bird where he stands. And birds symbolize freedom of flight, precision and timing and perspective, vision and individuality, and this is definitely bad timing. So he's sure getting a perspective. Not only that, but he is also pricked by the barbed wire, and the timing shows the pain and beauty.
When I first watched that scene, I didn't see the barbed wire. I totally thought it was just the bird's bones, and he'd cut himself on the bone.
I think that's one of the things I thought originally too, but that was like when I was 10. But yeah. So come dinner time, we are introduced to Clay, who's a mute. Callie begs Clay to stay, to allow Darkly to stay, and he pretty much concedes. Darkly returns to his religious values and questions their marriage status. Like, why aren't you married? Like, I don't see a ring on your finger. In some sleight of hand, flirty ways, Clay produces a feather from her hair.
Fucking magic.
Yeah, he's fucking going all David Blaine in here. David Blaine, stop. But yeah, no.
Shave it.
He pretty much pulled a feather from her hair, acorn from her breast, and an egg. Callie also lays her apple core on the table. Callie and Clay then retire upstairs for some fun time, leaving Darkly at the table with a few items Clay produced, playing with Callie. That's when Darkly grabs the eaten apple. In dreams, an apple core indicates that whatever you are striving and aiming for may not be fulfilling and even harmful to you. It may also represent neglect and carelessness. Darkly returns to his room above the barn, where he places the apple core in the metal box in his safe, where we can see the barbed wire bird. We got the Bible, which is his path, the pick of his parents, which is his guidance, and the barbed wire bird, which is supposed to be like freedom and restraint. The apple core is also like the darker desires. So come the sixth day, this is pretty much where he tries to encourage and amends with Clay to maybe get married, and then seeks guidance with his dead parents. He's talking to a man who can't talk back, which isn't really getting him far. So he's a guy who's kind of has like this stutter, and Clay barely talks. That was the fastest day, sixth day. Come the seventh day. Darkly made efforts to break from her hold on him, but the pain still remains. So Clay tries to make a bond with Darkly, teaching him some knacks. You can see they go outside of the barn, and he's flipping a quarter around. And then that's when Jude returns with the Undertaker Quincy, and he's kind of like a humor of death. He talks so much you wish that you would die.
I loved him. I thought he was one of the most intriguing characters in the whole movie. Like, him and Jude were the heart of the movie for me. Especially Jude. Jude's character had so much to offer in such small doses. I wish the movie was about Jude.
Oh. Here we get to see, like, Jude notices the glances at Callie that Darkly is striking, and it pulls him out alone to go talk. So they go out away from the house onto, like, a little cliff, and he tries to make it clear that Callie and Clay are in love, that they pretty much only have eyes for each other. Though she might be the most beautiful thing on earth, and Jude somehow has kind of, he's not weakened to that. If he was at one point, he's realized, like, he has a little bit more groundingness. He goes away from, like, the forest, the heart of the forest, where he's more, I think he could probably be even more weakened. So Jude kind of teaches Darkly a lesson that's lost, I think, but not for naught. He tries to show him that not everything is as it looks. When he asks what the egg is, and Darkly, he's like, what is this egg? What do you think this egg is? And he's like, it's prehistoric fossilized shit. I thought this was kind of a important spot, because this is the 7th day, and this is the first time you actually see Darkly smile. When he removes himself from Callie, he's pretty much outside of her spell.
Well, it's a good part, too, because it shows you that being raised in that uber Christian environment, it kind of takes your childhood away from you. So it's kind of that child mentality that he almost never got. He's letting that child inside of him out.
Yeah.
Sitting with another person and being kind of accepted as a child, being like, we're giggling over shit. It shows you that he doesn't have the mental capability of an adult, and that really
it's pretty much they went out there
later,
made some poop jokes.
Exactly, yeah. It shows he doesn't have the mental capability to handle himself, and that really goes into stuff later.
Darkly and Jude end up going back, and Quincy and Jude prepare to take off. And Jude offers to come visit his new friend Darkly soon. Darkly watches Clay and Callie make love that night, which he becomes his own passage in Corinthians. For now we see each other through a glass darkly. This is the first time, but he only sees her. He must take his walk through the forest to sort things out. So he's so overwhelmed with what he's seeing and what he's not getting that he darts off into the woods that night and doesn't come back, at least not that night anyways. So this is starting of the 8th day, and he's feeling the other side of the blade, seeing underneath the blade, confirming the duality and ignoring the warnings. Speaking of warnings, so Darkly wakes along a river to a large silver shoe. What was your reaction to that?
What the fuck is 100% my reaction to that. That's actually in my notes. What the fuck is with the giant shoe in the water?
I think it depends on how you take the movie. If you're thinking about it like in a biblical sense, which I think was one of the interpretations that Ridley was trying to really drive home in his uber artsy, I'm too artsy for my own good. Oop, I got lazy and forgot I was trying to write a movie. I think the silver shoe was kind of his innocence and his will to keep himself, because the other thing that happens later that involves the silver shoe.
Right.
Man, yeah, what the fuck?
See, I mean, you see like this large floating silver shoe with a bird perched on it. So birds, again, are pretty much symbols of freedom, and the shoe is, you walk in it. It's a symbol of movement.
Well, and the bird, too, is his first taste of grabbing the bird with the barbed wire, is his first taste of self-mutilation.
Yeah,
like
realism type of thing.
Yeah, it was his first release of that self-mutilation that he does to himself later. It's that release of sanity.
What I found out of this omen as I saw it, so the shoes are of movement, the silver is clarity and focus, and the water also means movement, but is tied deeply to emotion. So he needs to move on with his emotions. The bird appeared to be a raven, and ravens are teachers. So this was a confusing omen to Darkly, and he saw his out, but he did not take it. And then after that, Darkly heads towards the house, but runs into Roxy, who we find is actually the mother of Clay. She makes a comment that things can be beautiful on top, but underneath they are uglier than sin. Pretty much going back to how like the representation of what dragonflies, they scurry atop of the water, but there's things that are deeper. Here we find that the barbed wire birds are for training the dog Dottie. It's asserted now that Callie is a witch. This is just now confirmed, and he kind of buys into it because it goes along with what his teachings are. And after returning, Callie tries to ease Darkly, saying, "Don't believe her and stay away." Roxy hates her. And it's kind of like a voiceover. And this is another creative shot that I really loved.
Yeah.
So it's a voiceover of Darkly painting a cradle red. And the cradle may symbolize his own childlike demeanor, his need for security or swaying back and forth of what to believe. And red is also the color of romance and also anger. So he can't decide which way to go. The movie is properly titled Passion. And Callie uses the defense of not wanting to talk about it and being the gentleman Darkly is. He would seem to have let the conversation in.
Right. And that's something like a lot of the descriptions and a lot of the stuff of the movie, a lot of the descriptors they use is erotic or eroticism when they're talking about this movie. And it's such small little details. It can be easily missed if you're not looking for it until you watch the movie and then you're like, oh, okay, there's this. Oh, okay, there's this. It's done so smartly. It's not like in your face nudity or...
It's like at the end of this scene where he's painting, he goes and looks at the redness of his hands before he washes them off, and it's like it's covered in red paint. It's kind of consuming. It's like the beginning of his transformation. Then you go back into the barn, and Darkly practices that self-flagellation, as you mentioned. It's kind of a ritual, and he squeezes the barbed wire bird, causing him to spill blood. It's a devotional ritual to pretty much tame and discipline his own guilt. In religious contexts, mortification of the flesh is seen as spiritual discipline, reestablishing your focus to God or penance. So come the 9th day. The fire is finally starting to rise, and Callie treats him again and warns him that he needs to be careful. She's kind of still shedding that light on him, even though witch was dropped, and for the viewer, it's not obvious, but you want to kind of like lead on with it too. So she says the wound can get infected, turn to poison, and could happen fast. That's also kind of like the information that was revealed to him. So it's kind of infecting him. So Darkly finally puts up his guard with Callie, and he has many questions but can't bring himself to question her. Then he just returns to the forest to seek answers from Roxy. And she kind of explains that she took Callie in when she lived in the house, and Callie killed her husband and stole her boy. And so pretty much paints her as like a temptress. And earlier, Callie admitted to living in the barn once, so that kind of explains that. Roxy reveals that Callie confided in her saying she was barren, and she speaks to Callie's favorite place in the world, the cave. She is drawn to the womb. She can't have babies, but that cave is pretty much the womb of the forest. Darkly, upon receiving the information, returns to the house, and another voiceover is shown of Darkly clearing the table. He's trying to get everything straightened out, but asking why he would ruin a family, and Callie admits that Clay's dad tried raping her and died in the act. So it seems, all in all, like... But right. You still, as a viewer, don't know what to believe.
Yeah, it's still you're still wanting to be...
Both stories are as believable as the next.
Exactly. You have no proof of one way or another. Yeah. Do you believe the hermit in the woods, or do you believe the...
Clay, he ends up fixing the radio, and the song called Look What You've Done to My Skin comes on. Perfect song. That song was also written, both of the songs in that movie were written by Philip Ridley and another guy. But... yeah, that's when Clay and Callie go to be free, and Darkly cannot help but feel hurt by his let-away heart, so he tries to contain himself with self-flagellation again. He storms off back into the barn and finds some more barbed wire, and like the barbed bird, he tries to train himself. He's been biting too hard. So then come the 10th day, 2 more days. So washing away the old, letting the child inside die. This is what the 10th day represents, at least to me. So Darkly is guarded. His emotions are tattered. He's giving Clay... no honest answer, even though Clay is trying to ask him, like, what's wrong? In his non-verbiage. He's dressed in a coat all day. At dinner, he is short with his answers and storms off once again before knocking over his milk, kind of like crying over spilled milk, to be upset about things that cannot be undone. That's what the meaning of spilled milk is. Another awesome symbol. He also throws his napkin down, kind of like throwing in the towel, like he's given up on who he is supposed to be. He's starting to abandon the efforts he's worked so hard to maintain. He's coming pretty much out of character. Then there's this unique shot. I think Jeremy might have something to say about this one. It's kind of a close-up of...
cover shot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Close-up of focus on the left side of Darkly, and left means sinister. He stands off the porch on the dark, and she stands on the step in the light, extending her help once again. She steps down to meet him, but he's become so closed off to any attempts on her part.
Yeah, I that was a note of mine, was that shot specifically was...
It was a bold shot that didn't... Yeah, it was a bold shot that didn't... It was a strong insert.
It's very, again, amateur looking, but it was unique. I haven't seen a shot like that before, and right. It's just... It's an uncomfortable... To me, that was kind of like the turning point. You deep down, you knew Brendan Fraser's character was going to snap at some point, but I think that shot right there pinpointed it that, okay, he's a different person now, and shit's about to go off the deep end.
As for the shot itself, the way he was in focus and she was in focus, there was a blurriness to his focus. Like it was almost 2 layers they put together. From a photographer's standpoint, to get them both in focus, they would just have to have like a higher f-stop or a higher field. So to go with how they were focusing things was curious to me. Like it was interesting cinematography.
I guarantee you that shot took a while to set up.
Right. It was an interesting cinematography choice to run it like that rather than just try to get the visual fields correct.
Right. I think it was well done. It was a great shot.
Yeah, great image. Just to put that little bit of fuzziness around Darkly was just, it didn't take me out of the moment, but it just kind of, it was one of those on the first watch. I was like, okay, that was an interesting choice.
Yeah.
When I watched it the second time through, it, like I said, it didn't take me out of the moment, but it was a, okay, interesting choice.
Yep.
Yeah. So this scene also is kind of when Clay comes out. She's not necessarily liking Darkly's, pretty much what he's saying back to her. Like, his whole demeanor is off. It's totally different. And this is also the first time you see Darkly kind of mimicking. Like, Clay tries to do something and Darkly kind of, I don't know, like makes a gesture back that is very off the mark. Like, it's not his character.
Right. And that's also the first time he says, "Do you want me to leave?"
Right.
That's the first time he brings up that he's not welcome anymore.
Yeah. So after they go back inside, he walks off, like storms off. He screams witch. He's like, witch, witch, witch. You know, like it begins to rain. It's kind of like washing away the good. So 11th day, the final straw. This is pretty much one of his breaking points here. Darkly wakes off the rock cliff. You know, he's on like a rock cliff as, you know, the sun is already up. There's fire ants crawling all over him. It's kind of suggestive to being consumed by fire.
Horrible CG.
Yeah, being close to the edge.
Yeah.
Close to the edge, off the brink. Like, that's kind of what I thought of the opening of this. He also enters Roxy's trailer to find Roxy mourning the death of her dog, Dottie. And then they try to do like a little, if you want to call it a ritual, to like send him off. They find that boot, or the shoe again. And Darkly watches the burning shoe. Yeah. So they use that as like a pyre. As they're watching the burning shoe on the water intensely, like both of them are just kind of like crazed. It's consuming both of them.
Right.
The water is a symbol of the unconscious, and walking over it in dreams can mean passing an obstacle, giving one the ability to accomplish something otherwise unable. Water is an element of life or birth, and the fire is a symbol of rebirth, a symbol of conversion. Everything fire touches changes it. Right. Fire over water is the unconscious transformation. So the dog is dead and the shoe kind of like walking with death. Before, the shoe seemed to be a warning. It is even more a symbol of danger now, more than ever. And it's nearly hypnotic to both Roxy and Darkly. Darkly is pretty much famished. Like, he hasn't eaten a few days. He's probably hallucinating, probably because of the paint fumes and stuff that they were just huffing. And this is where he sees his dead parents. What was your take on that? Was that just like, what the fuck? Again, you're at what the fuck way.
The whole movie is what the fuck to me.
This is where the movie kind of started getting too artsy for its own good, where he stopped making a tangible film and started leaving stuff up to interpretation.
Yeah.
And a movie that does that is losing the core audience and starts making films for, I can't say pretentious viewers, but for people who want to watch a movie like...
Totally detached.
Well, they want to watch a movie that they can hold over other people's heads.
Yeah.
They're like, I love this movie because of this, this, and this. I watch movies like Step Brothers.
Yeah.
They want to hold a movie like that. And I think this is where that movie takes that turn.
Right.
And that's where this movie loses a lot of its core audience, where it's like, okay, this is where the teacup ends and this is where Space Mountain begins.
Right. It's like the introduction of Ma and Pa. I thought they were hallucinations. Like I said, he was famished. He hasn't eaten in a few days. He's been walking tirelessly under the hot sun. Like, he inhaled the fumes and stuff, I'm sure. And I don't know if it's his subconscious playing on him, but the way that his parents are talking to him, like, it wants to take you out. But if you're familiar with how cult speech is, like, that's how they talk. They make everything a presentation. You know, like, come on, Darkly. Do what you're doing, Darkly. There is a way. You know, like, it's theatrical.
I thought theatrical is one word for it.
The way I took it with the shoe is the burning of the shoe is basically the release of the innocence. So, for example, what happens with Callie's mom?
Not Callie's, but Clay's mom.
Clay's mom. Yes, sorry. What happens to Clay's mom?
Did you say sorry?
He did. I just let it go. Sorry.
What happens with Clay's mom is due to the shoe burning. It just affects her differently than how it affects Darkly. And that's like the precursor to everything. That shoe happens to them. And then with the end, the revelation of the small shoe, what it does to Callie. And
yeah, I think
the
maybe
shoe is more of a symbolism towards
maybe even burning the shoe is kind of like burning the ships. Like you can't go back now. Like burning the shoe is a symbol of movement, and you're halting all movement right now.
basically,
So
or
you got to follow through.
changing the path. Yeah.
That too. When he returns back to the house, there's like some screaming and a little fight kind of pursues with him and Clay. He ends up tackling him because Darkly has like this crazed look, like he's kind of almost gunning for her, not to an extreme, but like, yeah. Then his shirt opens up and you can kind of see the barbed wire still wrapped around him and the dry blood and stuff. His flagellation it's Christ-like in a sense.
I want you gone.
It was an interesting performance for Ashley Judd. Her cry here did take me out. This could have been better. Yeah. It's like, oh, you gotta go.
No comment. Yeah.
So Darkly leaves, going straight to the cave, and which is her favorite place. He's affixed his gaze on the red handprint. Like the way that he also left from there, like, time for my walk in the woods or whatever. In the dark. In my walk in the dark.
Time for my walk.
Oh, yeah. That was also theatrical.
He has 2 lines in this movie that were just like, what?
Just 2?
Well, no, lines that were just like
That doesn't go.
purposely just like,
That's what I'm saying.
come on.
Like,
Was precisely one of them? Precisely.
No.
The dialogue
his
is-
very last line of dialogue.
I like that one.
So did I. That's what I'm saying. Like that line and then this line, the time for my walk in the dark. Lines that are just like, I could see some goth kid carving
poetic for
that
nothing.
into
Yeah.
his arm.
So you got that written in your notebook, and no. So yeah, when Jude returns and asks about Darkly, wondering why he was kicked out, and Callie gives no answers. Clay finally leaves. He tries to take a gun, but she's like, "No, leave it here." And then she finally reveals to Jude, like, "I didn't want to say anything to Clay."
Kill him.
Jude ends up finding him in the cave, tending his feelings of responsibility. Earlier, he said he feels kind of responsible since he was the one who found him. It seems as though a brotherly relationship, I would think. It comes off that way anyways. And Jude means praise or commendation. Biblically, Jude is the half-brother of Jesus, and Jesus wore the thorns, as does Darkly, wearing the thorns right now in barbed wire. It's a loose contrast, but still. Jude is set on getting out of the forest and just doing this right now and taking Darkly with him. You'll see another shot of the handprint, but it's now on the shadow of the heart of Jude in this scene. After the sending off of Dottie, Roxy is back in her trailer. She's drinking, and then she's sexualizing her weapon. She takes the barrel in her mouth and her toe on the trigger. As the bang rings out, Darkly darts up. So this is the final day. Darkly enters her trailer to find her dead with one to the head. His voices or hallucinations return, his parents edging the guidance more harsher than before. This scene was not the best scene, especially for Darkly. Like, his stutter is gone. Like, he's not using that, he's like, I don't know what to do, Mom, Pa, whatever. And then they pretty much claim out, like, no faith without blood. So, final night. This is the ending part here. Darkly releases all of his modesty now. From up until now, he's always been dressed up to the neck type of thing. The cave kind of serves as his womb to be born again. It's kind of christening over the fire. He paints himself red, which is the color of passion. Elsewhere, you can kind of see Callie and Clay engaging in their own form of passion simultaneously. The paint dirties the water. It was an awesome shot of like the paint kind of like, it's kind of like corrupting the subconscious. He touches the handprint of the cave where Callie once told him that handprint says, I'm part of time. There may be nothing left of me but this handprint. So in a way, it kind of says his goodbye. He takes up the large chiseling blade that arrived the day that he arrived and sets back through the woods. Jude is now arriving back to the cave to take Darkly, but Darkly's already gone. He's back at the house. And this, I thought, was also one of the magnificent shots because it is his passage, his biblical passage, his name. So Darkly stalks like a shadow outside the house, and Callie and Clay are making love. Her attention is brought to the figure in the window, Corinthians 13:12. For now we see each other through a glass darkly. They finally saw each other, and then he breaks through the window. And this is where it gets interesting. The two lovers try to fend off a crazed demon, which is Darkly. He takes his time swinging a blade, setting ablaze the house. Sparks are flying. One of the most powerful scenes. My favorite shot of this entire movie was this one. There is a 30-second gut-wrenching, blood-curdling scream. It was like, I was like, fuck. Yeah, I'm like, that was intense, you know? Like,
I thought it was a little too much.
I thought it was awesome. So
my biggest problem with this whole fight scene, and I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I definitely noticed it. A lot of the times he would hit and the power would spark, it was recycled of the proton pack from Ghostbusters. The bzzz.
I did not notice that.
Listen to it. It bothered the fuck out of me.
Right before Darkly could complete his journey of cutting down the witch, she cast her spell. Midnight becomes noon, pretty much, as I would say it. So midnight is what Darkly's name is. Darkly noon. The noon is 12. The Darkly of 12 is midnight. Midnight becomes noon, the brightest part of the day. He wore the war paint, which is devotion under the barbed wire. He closed off much of himself, yet she was still able to shine a light into the crack, which stopped him in his tracks. She said, I love you, Darkly. And right before he took that final swing, he stopped in his tracks. Then with a bang, his heart becomes a shadow. So he died from the hand of Jude and said, who will love me now? Like,
best line of the movie.
Yeah. So who will love me now? Who will love me now? So everything she says, like I said, was spoke into existence. Earlier, one of the first conversations, she said, one day the whole house will fall apart. And it did. Go to sleep. Please come back, Clay. All this. Everything was kind of coming to what she was saying. So then a circus family approaches the burned down house. The man quotes Darkly earlier's comment about going halfway into a forest before coming out, where she replies the same line of, it can go on forever. And the family reveals that they lost their belongings in the large shoe floating down the river. So all that symbology of what the shoe might have meant is probably just...
It's just bullshit.
It's just bullshit,
They were just traveling.
I called it at the beginning.
Yeah.
The shoe is just bullshit.
And this is
the whole fucking
something
time.
Something I noticed with like the ending here is like the boy seemed to adhere to Callie, like kind of like a spell was cast onto him, despite her tattered condition. Like she was just looking like shite. Whew, shiza.
But still 7 out of 10 would bang.
7 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
Like I was saying, Callie means beauty and lovely. She is the light. Darkly noon means midnight. He is the darkness he hasn't realized yet. Many conversations lead back to the concept of the forest, which was kind of like the concrete concept. Callie said her favorite place was the center of the forest, the cave, and she loves the heart of the forest, the womb. In analytical psychology, the forest represents femininity in the eyes of a young man, an unexplored realm full of the unknown. It stands for the unconscious and its mysteries, and the forest has great connection with the symbolism of the mother. It is a place where life thrives. For the movie itself, to try to wrap it up, like I was saying earlier, it's good to have something, script to paper, but what makes the script better? It's pretty much writing it in the font that is fitting for the characters of the story, on a paper that is fitting to the texture of the theme of the story, with the details and the footnotes in the corners, things you have to kind of look for. That's what I saw in this movie if I were to wrap it up. I think many movies tell the story with good actors that memorize their lines, but there's greater intentions behind movies like Passion of Darkly Noon with props, tools, cam angles, poetry in motion. What do you think?
Sorry, what? I wasn't listening. I'm not into symbology or whatever. Like when I watch a movie, I'm entertained by it or I'm not entertained by it. I don't look for meanings and stuff like that. And that's probably, like I said, I don't hate this movie. It's not a bad movie, but I also don't think it's as great as how you feel about it.
I'm one of the select few. I'm of the elite.
And there's a lot of people who agree with you.
And there's
no, I totally understand. It is a middle of the road type of movie.
Anybody that is listening to this that's never seen it doesn't have to now because Justin just
audiobooked it.
Yeah, exactly. My honest thoughts is that this movie is prequel to Encino Man.
Fucking dick.
Jeez. You already used that character like 3 times.
So if you think about it in not a Christian interpretation, but if you think about it in like a Hebrew version of the Garden of Eden, it can kind of go in that sense, in like a biblical sense. So if you think about it, if Clay is like the character, well, I guess it wouldn't be a Hebrew sense, but it's like a mixture of Christianity and Judaism. And the only reason Christianity's in there because Judaism doesn't believe in Jesus like a prophet, but if you think about it this way, as if Clay is the Jesus figure, he's the carpenter who goes on long walks. Think of Darkly as Lilith, the first woman in the Garden of Eden. Think of Callie as Satan. Think of Roxy as God. And think of Jude as Adam. The story kind of goes pretty well with the original telling of the Garden of Eden. And those who don't know the actual first telling of the Garden of Eden won't know Lilith and her version of the Garden of Eden. Lilith wasn't cooperative at all towards the Garden of Eden. She was easily persuaded. She wouldn't listen to God's word at all. She was just constantly giving in to temptation, even though Adam was, we're here for a reason, we're here to do this, we're here to do that. So she was instantly cast out. It kind of goes along those lines a little bit if you want to put a biblical sense to it. I think from a lot of the things I read, a lot of people do give it from a biblical sense, but there's no definite yes or no in those terms. It's just whatever you want to feel about it. Like a lot of these movies, a lot of the art house films that don't have a solid reasoning behind them, they leave it up to whatever your interpretation wants it to be. That's what I feel. That's what my interpretation is, but 1,700 other people who gave it a 10 out of 10 will argue with me.
Yeah, I don't know. Like me personally, even in my own things, I like simplistic plots, which this did have pretty much a simplistic plot, but I don't add all these.
I feel like when Philip really writes, like he considers the symbology. Like I don't know if I would have considered it more biblical or like more tarot or just basic, like
Right.
dream-esque type of thing.
I think that's the problem with the script, though. I think when he tried to write simplistic, it was bad. I think that was the problem. Like when he tried to dumb it down, I think it's not good. Like, because his simple parts were the parts where you went, oh man, this is just bad. And I think it took Brendan Fraser and Ashley Judd. I can't necessarily say it wasn't their bad performances, which I think they did really have bad performances, but I think they were given bad direction, and I think it all came from a bad script. Their basic parts were like, here you go, do this. From a director who really didn't have much experience to veteran actors and actresses, it was like, here, do this. Well, how do you want me to do it? You're good. You figure it out. Well, and it's a super basic thing, so they're just gonna. It's like you said earlier. How did he get these big names? Probably they're friends with Viggo Mortensen, because I'm thinking maybe he called in some favors.
Well, I mean, Ridley's not making movies anymore, so I don't know.
Might be a reason why.
Yeah, exactly. And Justin, don't take this the wrong way, because we were just kind of crap talking on Ridley, but I see this as a type of movie. Like if you ever wrote a movie and directed a movie, I see this 100% as the kind of movie you would make. And I'm not saying it would be bad. I just see, because I know even with the Colden script, like that's one thing you said about this movie too, is that, you know, you thought I might like it because to you it kind of resembles the Colden script that I wrote. And the
development of the character.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I didn't really see anything Colden related in it. I'm not saying if you're going to use this movie as inspiration for Colden, I mean that's all on you. I don't care, but I just I forgot. I lost my train of thought there with what I was going with.
And you
this,
can recast it now.
But I just you wanted to add. You know, there's a part in the Colden script that you wanted to add something, and we did. For like symbology, right. I don't want to say it because it'll ruin it for all of our millions of listeners. But yeah, I don't know. I think as I said earlier, I don't feel like there was a solid script, and I feel like a lot of the lines were probably not ad lib, but they gave Ashley Judd and Brendan Fraser the chance to. How would you say it type of thing. And there was even a part in it where I think I wrote it in my notes where Ashley Judd says the word, she's trying to say infection, and she totally messes up the word, and it's in there. And it's not like, it has nothing to do with like, that's how her character would say or anything. I think it was just that Ridley's not a good director. didn't catch it and didn't
was the
really
best
care.
they had.
She's like,
It was 99 or 1994. They had spiel reels type of.
I just the dialogue is 100% what ruined this movie for me.
Well, and it's one of those things too. If this was a huge production movie, if this was going to screen, I could see a lot of those things being corrected. But when it was just going to Cannes and it was just a festival movie, I could see them maybe taking their foot off the throttle a little bit and being more, maybe their budget wasn't as high. They had to get off a little editing. Interesting thing I found out about this movie, the producer, Herbert Paulet, I'm probably murdering his last name, was also the producer for Mandy. And you can see, when I found that out, you can definitely see a lot of similarities between some of the color ratios, the huge saturation issues, and some of the angles. They're very similar, which bumped it up in some areas. Like knowing that style was actually a stylistic choice rather than just a fuck it, leave it. It gave me back that, okay, they're doing it for a reason. Now, what is that reason? And I applaud them for being brave and taking that choice. Just because I didn't like that choice doesn't mean a lot of people didn't. Like I said, there's 1,700 10 out of 10 ratings on it. And doesn't mean there's not 550 1 out of 10 ratings.
There's a lot of ones.
And that's the great thing about cinema is,
which is art in general.
Yeah,
like anything's for
every movie out there, we'll just say for the sake of this, every movie out there, you are going to have a handful of people that think it's the best fucking movie out there. You're going to have a giant group that thinks, no, it was a good movie. Yeah. And you're going to have a big group that's like, this is the fucking worst thing ever. And that's what's fucking great about it. And
cinema's so subjective.
And that's also like, as a filmmaker, it's great to know that and to have people hate your stuff. And even if they trash your movie, you should learn from that.
Right.
You should listen to them and take into consideration, like, okay, well, this is what they didn't like. So what can I add to my next film that'll get their attention that they might like? And I'll still have these people like it. So, I mean, that's what's great. Like I said, I don't hate this movie. I don't love this movie. Will I ever watch it again? It would probably be a while. It's not going to be. I'm not.
At my place.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, like you have. If you don't like something, you can turn it off, unless you're supposed to do a movie review about it.
And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of those.
And like I said, I gave it another chance. When I watched it the first time, I was harsh on it. I'm like, okay, maybe I watched this movie too critically. I watched it. I was dissecting it too much. I was getting too much of that movie watcher's head in it. Because when we first watched, the first one we did, Pulp Fiction, I've seen this movie hundreds of times. So I watched it with that critic's eye. Second movie we watched, The Dead Don't Die. I watched it with that critic's eye because I've seen it a whole bunch of times. Third movie we watched, Passion of Darkly Noon. Never seen it. I've never heard anything about it. I still watched it with that critic's eye, but I didn't know anything about it. So I felt like I was so out of the moment. So I was like, oh, well, shit. Well, maybe I have to watch it again to be in the moment. Maybe I'll enjoy it more.
Right. So even if you've watched like Pulp Fiction today without knowing anything about it, I think knowing today's climate, you might even see it with a different sort of critical eye.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or if you didn't even know anything about Tarantino.
And that's kind of like how I want to treat all these movies is I do want to watch them more than once. Like I did with The Dead Don't Die. I watched it the first time looking for things like I'm supposed to when we watch these. And then I tried the second time watching it as a fan. And
so I usually watch it just once, but it takes me like 6 hours to watch it. So it's
this one probably took you like 19 days. Like you probably were writing a review well before we even started announcing it. But
stop. Yeah, just a few acting spots. I think different angles. I would have changed a few things about it, but yeah, dialogue for you.
Dialogue for me, and then I also would have changed. I think more death, more killings.
It's not one of those movies. No, it was a specific.
This is what I would do to change it to make it a better movie. I would have a couple more bodies to
Jude keep going from the beginning.
I just think that there should have been a few more bodies added to that body count.
Definitely more nude.
Ashley
Judd.
Yeah,
and something about her in this role. Fuck,
Girl Next Door.
She made me
Girl
feel
Next
my
Door.
feelings.
I think we needed a little bit more ballage from
more bread,
Fraser.
bread and Fraser balls.
So,
No, not to sound gay or anything, but
and you're
there's
probably
not,
going to
not
with whatever you say.
nearly enough dick in cinema.
We can make that
Like
happen.
the amount of breast to dick in cinema is not nearly.
Well, that's
fair.
because you have two breasts and one dick.
Can you
Usually.
But isn't it the rating would have to be different if there's a dick? Just like
That's so fucked up.
You can censor the hole.
Yeah, like I'd be fine with just shaft.
No.
Just edit the tip.
It's like I don't want to see
well,
something that's not circumcised. Oh, fuck.
have you seen Unemployed? There's a lot of man ass in that. So, well, here's some exciting news, boys. So, our next BPT movie review, episode 004, we're already going to have a guest.
Already a guest.
We are. So we're going to have a good friend of mine, good friend of Justin's.
Cristino.
Lonnie, you've met him a few times. He's actually a co-star in Unemployed with Justin, a movie we did a few years ago. John Marshall is going to be here. He's a huge movie fan, and he's picking the movie, and we're actually going to be reviewing the 2004 Tom Hanks movie, The Terminal, which I have not seen. Tom Hanks is one of my favorite
It's a good
actors.
one.
I've not seen that movie.
I've seen it once, and it
I
makes a
think I've
brother
seen
drop
it,
a
like,
tear.
once or twice.
Really? Well,
It'll be fun.
we'll be reviewing that. We'll have John here in a couple of weeks.
I'm gonna predict it. It's gonna be. Oh, if I say it out loud, it's gonna be a 4-star for him.
We got
For me?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see.
well, we've got John's next choice. What do you got on the roster for?
So after that, I'm gonna pick it, and I'm gonna go with a 2006 movie called Alpha Dogs.
Oh, nice. I know my next one after Alpha Dogs. We are gonna watch. I can't think of the year off the top of my head, but we are gonna watch Stand by Me.
Ooh. And Justin's gonna
I'm gonna do one of my favorite.
Darkly Noon Part 2.
We're gonna watch Darkly Noon again till you guys love it.
Darkly Noon 30.
You gotta watch it again. You gotta see with a different eye. One of my favorite.
The Blu-ray cut.
One of my favorite scary movies. Barney's Grand Adventure. It'll fuck you up, dude.
All right. I'm looking
Is that the
forward to it,
title?
guys.
Barney's
Great Adventure fucks you up.
Yeah. So, let us know what you guys think of Passion of Darkly Noon. Leave a comment, share, like or dislike, and subscribe. Do that. Yeah. Anything, boys?
No, it's a pleasure as always. I enjoy these nights, and
Be prepared to get ear molested by 4 of us next time.
Oh yeah.
All right. Have a good one.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.